They say sequels are never as good as the original. Cash grabs, diminishing returns, lightning that never strikes twice. They're wrong. Some of the most acclaimed, most awarded, most culturally dominant films in history weren't the first movie in their franchise. They were the second one. The one that was supposed to just cash in on the original's success, the one nobody expected to actually matter. Today, we're counting down 10 sequels that didn't just match the original, they buried it. Bigger box office numbers, higher critical scores, actual Academy Awards the first film never got anywhere near. And stick around for the very end, because the #1 film on this list pulled off something that, to this day, no sequel before or since has ever repeated. Not one. We'll also run through some honorable mentions that almost cracked the top 10, so if your favorite doesn't show up in the main list, hang tight. Let's get into it. Number 10, Before Sunset. We're starting with the quiet one on this list. No explosions, no villains, just two people talking. And somehow, that's enough to make it one of the most acclaimed sequels ever made. Before Sunrise, released back in 1995, gave us one perfect night. Two strangers, Jesse, an American backpacker, and Celine, a French student, meet on a train, get off together on a whim in Vienna, and spend one night walking and talking before parting ways, possibly forever. It's romantic precisely because it's fleeting. No promises, no consequences. Before Sunset picks the story back up 9 years later, and this time, the stakes are painfully real. Jesse is now married with a child, and clearly not happy about it. Celine shows up unannounced at his book signing in Paris, where he's just published a novel that's obviously about their one night together. What follows is essentially one long, unbroken conversation, captured in something close to real time. The film runs about 80 minutes, matching almost exactly the amount of story time it covers. Here's what makes this sequel hit differently than the original. The first film ran entirely on youthful spontaneity, the thrill of a connection with zero stakes attached. This one runs on regret, on the terrifying, very adult question of, did I make the wrong choice with my entire life? Director Richard Linklater co-wrote the screenplay with his two stars, Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, drawing heavily from their own lives and relationships to make the dialogue feel almost unscripted. That collaboration paid off. All three of them received an Academy Award nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. And then there's the ending, famously, achingly ambiguous. Celine dances around her apartment, singing softly, while Jesse, who has a flight to catch, just watches the clock run out. The film cuts to black before we ever find out what he decides. Critics still cite it as one of the greatest trust your audience endings ever put on film because it refuses to hand you a tidy resolution. Rotten Tomatoes score, 95%. The original sits at 89%. Not a massive gap on paper, but critically, Before Sunset is almost universally regarded as the tighter, more mature, more emotionally dangerous film of the two. Number 9, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Next up, a franchise reboot that somehow got more ambitious with its second entry, which almost never happens. 2011's Rise of the Planet of the Apes was a fairly contained story. A pharmaceutical experiment goes right for a chimpanzee named Caesar, then catastrophically wrong for humanity. Good movie, a surprise hit even, but modest in scale, mostly confined to labs, suburban homes, and a bridge chase finale. Dawn blows that scale wide open. New director Matt Reeves stepped in and built an entire post-apocalyptic world from scratch. Two full civilizations, apes and the last surviving pockets of humanity, both trying desperately to avoid a war that neither side actually wants, even as circumstances push them toward one anyway. At the center of it all is Caesar, and Andy Serkis's motion capture performance here is so layered and so genuinely tragic that critics at the time argued he deserved real Oscar consideration for it, a conversation that was almost unheard of for a mocap performance back in 2014. He's not just an animated ape on screen, he's a leader wrestling with trust, betrayal, and the weight of responsibility for an entire species. The visual effects work from Weta Digital also represented a massive leap beyond the first film. These apes don't just move convincingly, they emote. You can read hesitation, grief, and fury on their faces in close-up, which was groundbreaking for the technology at the time. Rotten Tomatoes, 90%, compared to 82% for Rise. This was the film that proved the Apes reboot trilogy wasn't just a fun update of an old franchise. It was quietly building toward one of the most respected trilogies in modern blockbuster filmmaking. And 3 years later, War for the Planet of the Apes would push that even further, drawing comparisons to prestige war dramas rather than typical summer tentpoles. Number 8. Mad Max: Fury Road. Now here's a wild one. 30 years. That's how long George Miller waited between Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, released in 1985, and this film. And instead of playing it safe with a nostalgic retread, he came back and made what a huge number of critics now consider the single greatest action film of the 21st century. Fury Road is, structurally, one long chase sequence stretched across 2 hours. Real cars, real desert, real fire. Miller famously insisted on doing as much practically as possible, using CGI mainly to clean up and enhance rather than to generate the action itself. That commitment gives the movie a tactile, visceral quality that's almost impossible to fake digitally. The results speak for themselves. 10 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, a category action films almost never crack. It won 6 of them: film editing, production design, costume design, makeup and hairstyling, sound editing, and sound mixing. That's a haul the original Mad Max trilogy never got remotely close to. And here's a twist worth mentioning. A huge portion of fans and critics argue that Charlize Theron's Imperator Furiosa is actually a more compelling protagonist than Max himself, who spends much of the film as almost a secondary character in his own franchise. That's a genuinely bold structural choice for a legacy sequel to make, and it paid off. Film schools now teach Fury Road as a masterclass in visual storytelling, with minimal reliance on exposition or dialogue. Rotten Tomatoes, 97%. Number 7. Spider-Man 2. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 is the movie people point to when they want to explain what a Part 2 is actually supposed to accomplish. The first Spider-Man film, released in 2002, was fundamentally an origin story. The bite, the powers, the "with great power comes great responsibility" thesis statement. This sequel is about the cost of that origin. Peter Parker is burning out. He's failing his classes, losing his job, losing Mary Jane, and the psychological toll gets so severe that he actually starts losing his powers, a metaphor for burnout that resonated with audiences well beyond typical comic book fans. And then there's Doc Ock. Alfred Molina's performance turned Otto Octavius into one of the genre's great tragic villains, not evil for evil's sake, but a brilliant, well-meaning scientist destroyed by his own arrogance and a fusion experiment gone catastrophically wrong. You genuinely feel for him by the film's end. The movie won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, and that elevated train fight where Spider-Man single-handedly stops a runaway train and collapses from exhaustion in front of unmasked bystanders is still cited by directors, including several who went on to shape the modern Marvel Cinematic Universe, as the benchmark for staging a superhero fight that actually carries emotional weight rather than just spectacle. Rotten Tomatoes, 93%, up from 90% for the original. It's a small jump on the scorecard, but ask any comic book movie fan which film in the Raimi trilogy holds up best today, and Spider-Man 2 wins that conversation almost every time. Number 6. The Dark Knight. You knew this one was coming. Christopher Nolan's follow-up to 2005's Batman Begins didn't just improve on the first film. It stepped completely outside the boundaries of the superhero genre and became a full-blown crime epic, drawing heavy influence from films like Michael Mann's Heat. This isn't a movie about a man in a bat costume punching criminals. It's a movie about escalation, chaos theory, and what happens to a city's soul when its protectors are forced to break their own rules. And then, of course, there's Heath Ledger. His performance as the Joker, a nihilist by his own admission, no clear motive beyond chaos for its own sake, became one of the most iconic villain performances ever committed to film. Ledger tragically passed away before the movie was even released, and months later, he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor posthumously, one of the only acting Oscars in history awarded for a performance in a comic book movie. The film crossed $1 billion worldwide, becoming a genuine cultural phenomenon rather than just a successful franchise sequel. And when it was controversially snubbed for a Best Picture nomination that year, the public backlash was intense enough that the Academy actually expanded the category from 5 nominees to 10 nominees starting the very next year, a structural change to the Oscars themselves, triggered in large part by this one film. That's how much of a shockwave this sequel sent through the industry. Number 5. Toy Story 2. Here's a fun bit of trivia. This movie almost never made it to theaters at all. Pixar originally planned Toy Story 2 as a cheap, direct-to-video sequel, the kind of quick cash-in that Disney was churning out for a lot of its animated hits in the 90s. Partway through production, the team scrapped that plan entirely and rebuilt the whole thing from the ground up as a full theatrical feature. That decision changed everything. Toy Story 2 introduces Jessie the cowgirl, and her backstory, set to the devastating Sarah McLachlan song When She Loved Me, added a layer of heartbreak about abandonment and being outgrown that the original film, for all its charm and humor, never really touched. It's widely considered one of the most emotionally affecting sequences in the entire Pixar filmography. The film also deepens Woody's core arc in a meaningful way. Is he a toy meant to be loved, played with, and eventually outgrown? Or a rare collectible meant to sit behind glass forever, untouched but preserved? That's a genuinely weighty question dressed up as a kids' movie, and it works. Rotten Tomatoes, 100%. Along with Toy Story 3 years later, this film is regularly held up as proof that Pixar's sequels could actually out-emote their originals, a feat that almost no other animation studio has managed to pull off consistently, before or since. Number 4. Aliens, 1986. James Cameron faced a real choice when he took on the sequel to Ridley Scott's Alien. He could repeat what worked the first time, slow burn horror, one creature stalking a crew through dark corridors, or he could do something completely different. He picked completely different. His reported pitch to the studio was essentially Vietnam in space. Ripley wakes up from 57 years of cryosleep, only to discover that nobody believed her warnings from the first film, so she reluctantly goes back to face the horror again, except this time she's accompanied by a full squad of heavily armed colonial marines. And this time, there isn't just one alien lurking in the shadows, there's an entire hive and a queen protecting it. Sigourney Weaver received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress for this role, genuinely rare air for a performance in an action horror film, then or now. The movie also won 2 Oscars outright, for visual effects and sound effects editing. What makes this sequel especially notable is that it's a complete genre swap, from atmospheric horror to full-throttle action, and it still managed to expand the franchise's mythology in meaningful ways instead of just cashing in on name recognition. Rotten Tomatoes, 98%. Number 3. Terminator 2. Judgment Day. At roughly $100 million, this was the most expensive film ever made at the time of its release. James Cameron poured that budget into pioneering CGI morphing effects for Robert Patrick's T-1000, a liquid metal assassin that could reshape itself at will. That visual effects work is still studied today as a genuine turning point in what computer animation could accomplish inside a live-action film. But the real trick of this sequel isn't the visual effects, it's the reframing of the entire premise. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator, the unstoppable, remorseless killing machine from the first film, becomes the protector this time around. That single flip gives the whole story an emotional center the original never had, built around a surrogate father-son bond with a young John Connor, and eventually a genuinely moving sacrifice at the film's climax. The film won 4 Academy Awards, all in technical categories: visual effects, sound editing, Rotten Tomatoes, 93%. It's regularly ranked as one of the greatest action films ever made, period. A sequel that managed to out-innovate its own predecessor, both technically, with effects nobody had seen before, and emotionally, with a story that actually made audiences care. Number 2. The Empire Strikes Back, 1980. If you ask most Star Wars fans to name the single best film in the entire saga, this is usually the answer. Not A New Hope, this one. Director Irvin Kershner, with George Lucas stepping back into a producing role, took the story somewhere considerably darker and more mythic than the original. Luke's training with Yoda on the swamp planet Dagobah runs in parallel with Han and Leia's increasingly desperate flight from the Empire, and both threads build toward genuine devastation by the film's end. Here's what made this such a risky move at the time. This is the only film in the original trilogy that ends in outright defeat. Han is frozen in carbonite and shipped off to Jabba the Hutt. Luke loses a hand and learns the single most devastating truth in movie history about his own parentage. The rebellion is scattered, broken, and on the run. That gamble paid off completely. Rotten Tomatoes, 94%. It's consistently voted the best Star Wars film ever made in fan and critic polls alike. And that twist, you already know the line, remains one of the most quoted, most referenced reveals in the entire history of cinema. Practically every dark middle chapter in every trilogy released since is, in one way or another, trying to recreate what this movie pulled off first. Number 1. The Godfather, Part 2, 1974. And here it is. Number 1. The sequel that did something no other film on this entire list, no other sequel in the history of cinema has ever managed to repeat. The Godfather Part 2 became the first sequel in Academy Award history to win Best Picture. Francis Ford Coppola built the film around two interwoven timelines running in parallel. One follows a young Vito Corleone, rising from a Sicilian immigrant with nothing to a powerful crime boss in early 1900s New York. The other follows Michael Corleone in the present day, spiraling into paranoid isolation as he consolidates and ultimately corrupts beyond recognition everything his father spent a lifetime building. Robert De Niro won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor playing young Vito, a role originated by Marlon Brando himself in the first film, an almost unheard-of feat, two different actors winning acclaim for the same character in the same franchise. The movie won 6 Oscars total, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Now, has it actually surpassed the original in the eyes of history? That's still genuinely debated. The American Film Institute has ranked it both above and below the first Godfather at different points over the decades, and film critics argue about it to this day. But that debate is exactly what makes it number 1 on this list. This isn't a sequel that snuck past a weak original film. The Godfather is regularly named one of the greatest movies ever made, and its own sequel is still considered by a huge number of critics and filmmakers to be even better than that. That's the absolute ceiling of what a sequel can achieve. A few more that almost cracked the top 10, worth checking out if you haven't already. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Widely considered the best Star Trek film ever made, full stop, and the template for how to do a legacy villain return. X2, X-Men United. The stakes, the politics, and the emotional stakes of the entire mutant saga well beyond the first film. Paddington 2 somehow scored even higher on Rotten Tomatoes than its already beloved predecessor, landing at 99%. A Quiet Place Part 2 expanded the world of the franchise significantly without losing an ounce of the first film's tension. 22 Jump Street, a comedy sequel that got fully self-aware about the absurdity of improving on its own formula, and somehow that self-awareness made it funnier. Wayne's World 2 and Gremlins 2, both comedies that leaned into pure chaos the second time around, and a lot of fans genuinely prefer them to the originals. If any of those deserved a full spot on the main list instead of an honorable mention, let me know in the comments. This could easily turn into a part 2. So there you have it, 10 sequels that didn't just match the original, they redefined what a part 2 could even be. Which one surprised you the most? Which one do you think I got wrong or ranked too low? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one, and depending on what you say, this could genuinely turn into a follow-up video. If you enjoyed this one, do me a favor and hit subscribe, and turn on notifications while you're at it. We've got a whole series planned around movie myths just like this one. Trilogies that got worse with every entry, reboots that flopped hard, remakes that nobody expected to actually work. And if this video kept you entertained for the last 20 minutes, smash that like button before you go. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and it costs you nothing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.